The dust of the Arabian Peninsula does not settle easily. Khalid and al-Walid. History books are littered with the names of the defeated, the tactical geniuses who stumbled, the legends who bled. He is the sword of God, a title forged in the crucible of war, yet we must approach this legacy with a deliberate, discerning eye. To study Khalid is to walk a tightrope between the awe of the chronicler and the scrutiny of the skeptic. But as we peel back the layers of hagiography, we encounter the inevitable friction of time. Modern archaeological findings and cross-referenced Byzantine and Sassanid records offer a more fragmented reality. We must acknowledge that interpretations vary wildly among historians. Was he a military savant whose brilliance outpaced his era, or was he the beneficiary of an emerging, highly motivated force that thrived on the momentum of a new ideology? We will navigate this divide, honoring the weight of the tradition while testing its edges against the rigors of modern inquiry. The story of Khalid is not merely a chronicle of swords and shields, it is a meditation on the nature of leadership and the fragility of historical truth. Beneath the myth, beneath the religious iconography, and beneath the layers of intervening centuries, a man remains. A man who, in the heat of the fray, saw the world not as it was, but as a series of vulnerabilities waiting to be exploited. The sun begins to set, casting long, distorted shadows over the ruins of forgotten outposts. The tactical genius of the sword of God awaits. The 7th century was not a time of peace, it was an era of exhaustion. Their borders were fluid, marked by the charred remains of cities and the hollow silence of depopulated provinces. They looked upon the Arabian Peninsula with casual arrogance, seeing only a vast, fractured wilderness of shifting sands and nomadic squabbles, a theater of no consequence. But in the heart of that wilderness, a profound tectonic shift was underway. Where the Byzantines and Sassanids saw only tribal fragmentation, a singular, focused energy was crystallizing. This was the crucible. The world was teetering on the edge of a fundamental transformation, held in a brittle balance by two dying giants who failed to notice the storm gathering in the desert. They measured power in stone walls, heavy cataphracts, and gold-leafed bureaucracy. As the caliphate unified, the desert tribes ceased to be a collection of disparate factions and became a singular, disciplined instrument of destiny. The stage was set for a collision that would rewrite the maps of the known world. The air was thick with the scent of impending upheaval, a stillness before the gale. They moved with a speed that baffled the scouts of Constantinople and Ctesiphon alike. They were ghosts in the terrain, masters of the arid expanses, appearing where they were least expected and vanishing before the crushing weight of imperial legions could be brought to bear. The dust of the Hijaz was about to settle over the ruins of empires that had reigned for an eternity. The era of the sword had arrived. The landscape of the Levant was a chessboard of shifting sand, and Khalid ibn al-Walid was the master of its geometry. As the Byzantine legions crested the horizon at Yarmouk, their armor shimmering under a merciless sun, they saw a wall of men. He did not fight wars of attrition, he fought wars of kinetic disruption. While his contemporaries shackled themselves to rigid phalanxes and traditional lines, Khalid weaponized the horizon itself. He invited the Sassanid forces into a trap of his own design, concealing his mobile cavalry reserves behind the hills like a coiled spring. When the moment of impact arrived, the trap snapped shut, turning the battlefield into a claustrophobic cage where numerical superiority became a liability, not an asset. He understood that an army is a psychological organism, and he knew exactly where to sever the nerves. He utilized the mobile guard, a hand-picked elite cavalry unit, not merely as shock troops, but as a scalpel. By controlling the enemy's fear, he controlled the flow of time itself. At Yarmouk, against an army that dwarfed his own, he turned the environment into an extension of his will. He didn't just break the Byzantine lines. He shattered their morale by striking at their logistical and emotional centers simultaneously. He understood that if he could break the cohesion of the command, the bodies of the soldiers would inevitably follow. He stripped away the rigid defenses of the old world, replacing them with a doctrine of speed, surprise, and absolute psychological dominance. He proved that an army is not defined by its head count, but by the velocity of its intent. The horizon was no longer a boundary. For Khalid, it was a weapon. The maps of the ancient world were not merely drawn in ink. They were etched in the blood of empires that believed themselves eternal. When Khalid ibn al-Walid moved his forces, he did not simply win battles, he dismantled the logic of imperial geography. The rapid, systematic dismantling of Persian dominance was not a gradual decay. It was a thunderclap that echoed from the Zagros Mountains to the gates of Ctesiphon. Simultaneously, the Byzantine grip on the Levant, a province that had defined Roman identity for generations, slipped away with a finality that stunned the halls of Constantinople. Damascus, Antioch, and Jerusalem were no longer frontier outposts of a distant emperor. They became the heart of a new, surging reality. He turned the desert, once considered a barren wasteland, into a highway for a new world order. Yet, the true weight of his legacy lies in the silence that followed. Look at the modern Middle East, and you're looking at the echoes of his maneuvers. He did not just conquer land. He rewrote the trajectory of human history, shifting the center of gravity away from the Mediterranean and toward the cradle of a rising civilization. We often look at the past as a static gallery of portraits, forgetting that these figures were flesh and blood, wrestling with the same questions of legacy and purpose that haunt us today. Khalid was not a mythical construct. He was a man who understood that history is not something that happens to you, it is something you dictate through action. We spend our lives building walls to protect what we think is permanent, only to realize that true impact is measured by how much we change the world after we are gone. If you found the story of the Sword of Allah as compelling as the history he reshaped, consider subscribing to the channel. We are dedicated to uncovering the figures who refuse to be footnotes in the margins of time. History is a relentless current. Stay tuned as we navigate the next chapter together.